This is CBC Vancouver News.
It took a while, but winter has finally arrived on the South Coast.
It just didn't feel festive this year, so this is definitely a good change.
We just made a snowman and we're pretty excited.
El Nino is essentially on pause right now.
The warmest December on record gives way to a blast of winter. Today, just a taste of what's to come. Plus, search and rescue crews level serious allegations against the province.
The pushback and bullying and threats that we were getting from EMCR staff, it was just not a healthy relationship.
Half a dozen teams accuse the government of bullying, intimidation, and ignoring safety concerns. Also, trying to house the unhoused in tiny homes.
This is the scene now. The replacement would be proper structured pods that are clean, that are safe.
A volunteer-led project that started in Prince George tries to bring the solution to Vancouver. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Dan is off tonight. After months of mild weather, a small blast of winter hit much of BC today. Snowfall warnings have been blanketing many regions of the province and continue tonight as well. And it could be just a foreshadowing of what's to come later this week. As John Hernandez is finding out, temperatures are set to plummet.
The snow is starting to pile up atop Burnaby Mountain. For many who live up here, it's better late than never.
I think it's really exciting. We were hoping for a white Christmas and we didn't get it, and now we've got it. We've just made a snowman.
It just didn't feel festive this year, so this is definitely a good change.
But commuters might be a bit more wary.
It's always a little bit nerve-wracking because I live out in the suburbs across the Portman Bridge, and I'm never sure what it's going to be like at SFU or what the commute's going to be like.
Commuter chaos that never quite came. Snow began falling across Metro Vancouver this morning, but turned into rainfall by the afternoon. Still, meteorologists warn it could be a sign of what's to come.
We need to be cognizant that this is kind of the prelude to a very interesting week of weather. El Nino is essentially on pause right now.
After an unseasonably warm December, snow has been piling up on BC mountain passes. Today, police confirmed a fatal crash on the Coquihalla south of Merritt and are urging drivers to slow down. Snowfall warnings have been issued for parts of the Fraser Valley and Howe Sound.
If you're traveling through and everything else, make sure you've got fuel in your vehicles and you have prepared yourself.
Sometimes we forget that we are in the mountains and conditions can change very, very quickly.
Temperatures are expected to drop well below zero through the week, including in Metro Vancouver. Officials warn that could mean challenging commutes in the days ahead.
We're out there trying to make it safe for the traveling public as much as possible. If we have congestion or a lot of vehicles out in the road, our trucks travel the same speed that the congestion is moving, so it just slows us down.
And then there's the wind, which is also expected and could coincide with high tides, a combination that's proved particularly destructive in years past.
We're especially concerned along the Victoria coast, southern, towards Juan de Fuca Strait, the Gulf Islands, and maybe even Boundary Bay.
The potential for an eventful week after a quiet start to the winter. John Hernandez, CBC News, Burnaby.
Parts of Vancouver Island saw 10 centimeters of snow today, along with gusty winds. As our Claire Palmer tells us, more snow is expected later this week there as well.
Nanaimo has its first taste of winter.
Take your time, be careful. It's our first shot of winter, so it's a big adjustment for a lot of people, but give yourself lots of time and lots of space to get where you need to go safely.
Snow has been in the forecast for almost a week, and the city of Nanaimo has been preparing.
All weekend we had trucks out preparing the roads, and we're seeing another band coming in later in the week, so we're treating this as a bit of a training session, making sure all of our equipment is ready to go when we're expecting to see more snow and colder temperatures starting Thursday morning.
Some areas on Vancouver Island were expecting to get 5 to 10 centimeters of snow today. In Nanaimo, it was a mix of rain and snow. Many are taking the chance to get their snow tires on after a mild start to the winter. At Cal Tire, business is picking up.
The first snowfall of the year brings in a lot of customers. Usually when the snow falls in November, December, it's usually busier then, but that early January snowfall can also cause a lot of customers to come and get tires and get their winter tires put on.
Today is just a taste of what's to come, with more snow and accumulation in the forecast for later this week.
Yeah, snow tires are number one, right? A lot of people don't even have snow tires. Chains aren't necessary around here, and just drive slow and watch out for guys that are clearing the roads and making it safe.
Stay home if you have to.
Stay home unless you need something. Don't go up to the grocery store for a loaf of bread at 7 a.m. because we run into those people all the time.
Monday's snow mostly turned to rain and mixed precipitation by the afternoon. For now, it's important to adjust your driving, watch the weather, and stay warm. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
In North Vancouver, crowds gathered at a memorial this evening, many from the Iranian community. The vigil was held in honor of those killed in 2020 when their flight was shot down shortly after taking off from Tehran, headed for Ukraine. 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents were among the 176 people killed, many with ties to BC. Ukrainian Airlines flight PS 752 was shot down by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Organizers of tonight's vigil say it's important to continue to mark the tragedy 4 years later.
Good news, after 4 years, the four countries, the affected countries, UK, Canada, Ukraine, and Sweden, brought the case to ICAO, as well as ICJ, the International Court of Justice. This should have happened 4 years ago, but with these events, with this awareness that we are working on, we put pressure on the politicians to file these cases against Iran.
Premier David Eby says the province is working with the city of North Vancouver to create a permanent monument to remember those who died. Well, serious allegations are being leveled over how the BC government is handling the province's search and rescue community. The former head of the BC Search and Rescue Association says he sent a 7-page letter to the province outlining bullying and safety concerns. And as Mira Baines reports, other agencies are backing up his claims.
Some members of BC Search and Rescue community are speaking out over their treatment by the Ministry for Emergency Management and Climate Readiness staff. That ministry was just created last year, but some say there have been problems.
There were several issues that came up, including safety issues, including the lack of ability to use new technology in search and rescue that could save lives today, and the pushback and bullying and threats that we were getting from EMCR staff was just not a healthy relationship.
Yoakum has written a 7-page letter to Premier David Eby. Trouble has been brewing since November when the ministry directed the province's 78 search and rescue groups to register with the Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Agency. The province provides $6 million of base funding to the groups, and they fundraise the rest.
When we have disagreements with policy, we are afraid to push it, and there's been a lot of use of that leverage against us, which is grown in anger and frustration.
Volunteer members, about 3,400 across the province, would be covered by liability insurance if they sign on, but some groups worry their everyday life-saving operations will be hindered by government bureaucracy. One source of controversy has been the use of Artemis, a new technology, but rescuers say they need permission from the Department of National Defense, and the province is refusing to support their case.
It's actually a flying cell tower, so when the airplane takes off that's equipped with this, they can locate a cell phone from 30 miles away with a 10-meter accuracy.
They also want access to drones so rescuers can reach hard-to-reach areas. The groups emphasize they want a collaborative relationship with the ministry. The BC government responded to the allegations. George Heyman, the acting Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, said in a statement that the concerns raised in this letter are very troubling, and I intend to meet with the BC Search and Rescue Association this month to discuss and address these concerns. Together, I am confident we can re-establish the trust and effective collaborative relationships that British Columbians need and expect. Search and rescue agencies say the deadline to register with the Emergency Management Agency is February 15th. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The former president of a Northern BC Pride Society has been arrested and charged with committing child sex crimes. 39-year-old Sean Gravel served as board president for the North Peace Pride Society since 2018, but was recently removed from the role. The charges include sexual interference of a person under 16 and possession of child pornography. The alleged offenses all took place in or around Fort St. John, but have not been tested or proven in court. Gravel's arraignment hearing is scheduled for January 29th. A man injured in a shooting in Coquitlam over the weekend has now died. It happened in the middle of the afternoon Saturday near Westwood Street and Glen Drive. The victim has been identified now as a 21-year-old Coquitlam man. It marked the third shooting in Coquitlam in as many days. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says this was targeted, and they're working to figure out if these recent shootings are connected. An update on that carjacking at gunpoint in Surrey last night that ended with a stolen car crashing with a police cruiser. 3 men in their early 20s have now been charged. RCMP say the car was stolen in Surrey, then wound up colliding with a Langley police cruiser at a traffic stop. One officer was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. One suspect was also treated for a bite from a police dog. During a search of the car, officers found 3 loaded firearms and ammunition. Investigators are still trying to determine the motive. In Prince George, volunteers have built more than a dozen tiny homes for unhoused people. Now advocates want to bring the same project to Vancouver. But as Michelle Morton reports, the city is not on board.
So you'd literally take this out and put another structure. It would be about this tall.
Brad Gustafson is leading an initiative that aims to provide better shelter options for those living in tents at Crab Park.
When we started the effort, we specifically had to address 3 things: safety for their persons, security for their belongings, and a warmth that a tent cannot provide.
The project started in Prince George, where volunteers helped set up 18 tiny homes built at an encampment in the city.
Oh, it just warms the heart. The first lady we gave it to, she was like, "Oh, this is beautiful," and it's just a very basic structure, but for them, it's like just a huge upgrade from a tent, right?
Construction company InGreen Systems is on board to expand the project to Crab Park in Vancouver.
The pods can definitely go right all along here in 2 or 3 roads.
Yeah.
Sean Balagi is the president.
InGreen Systems is ready to go. We can have pods here next week as long as we have city's cooperation. So we are here to provide a solution. So we just want the city to come and meet us.
But the city of Vancouver said in a statement it does not support this project. Instead, it says it has a 2-year-long tiny shelter pilot project in a Strathcona parking lot, which it will assess to inform future projects of this type. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC's transportation minister has written a letter to Ottawa calling on the feds to help reduce overpass crashes by clearing regulatory roadblocks.
You know, we work with our counterparts that have the same enforcement and safety responsibilities that we do here in BC. But that's sometimes where it ends, because if the company is headquartered in another province and they haven't, committed those kinds of offenses on that in that particular province, they can take note of it, but we can't coordinate with other provinces, and we wish to do that.
The province vowed tough fines last month after a truck carrying heavy construction materials smashed into an overpass in Delta. That marked the 31st overpass hit in 1 year. Fleming hopes the federal government can work with provinces to improve standards. The Surrey Board of Trade is calling for a swift resolution to the Metro Vancouver Transit strike. Nearly 200 employees of Coast Mountain Bus Company began refusing overtime this weekend. Workers include supervisors overseeing everything from engineering to transit communications. The union representing transit workers says it will affect bus service for riders, and that key issues include wages and workloads stemming from staff shortages. Coast Mountain is urging striking workers to return to the bargaining table with what it calls realistic expectations. Hospitalized patients in this province have more complex needs than they used to. That's according to a new UBC study. Data from nearly 3.5 million hospitalizations in BC between 2002 and 2017 shows patients have become more likely to be admitted via the ER, have multiple medical issues, rely on 10 or more medications, be 75 years or older, and suffer an adverse event while in the hospital. Researchers say the increased complexity doesn't mean more people are dying in the hospital, which they say suggests the healthcare system is adapting well to patient needs. After the break, how severe weather is driving up the cost of insurance and leaving some vulnerable. That's coming up next. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A tiny frog that has presented big hurdles to construction projects in Gatineau may now stand in the way of a major highway project in Ontario. The western chorus frog, no bigger than a loonie, is a threatened species in Canada. And as Mike Crawley explains, the animal has now been found along the proposed route for Highway 413 at the northwestern edge of the GTA.
Meet the western chorus frog. Fully grown, it's only about the size of your thumb.
It's not always easy to spot a chorus frog, so the best way to know if they're around is by listening for them.
During mating season, right after the snow melts, the call of the male chorus frog sounds a bit like when you ripple the teeth of a comb. It prefers to breed in small, shallow, seasonal ponds, and it's on Canada's list of species at risk, classed as threatened.
Certainly habitat loss is a big factor. Many of these temporary ponds are not highly valued or thought of as being important habitats, so they're often the first kind of habitat that gets drained and developed.
On the outskirts of Montreal's suburbs, the presence of western chorus frogs halted a housing development and road construction. Researchers have found the threatened frog along the proposed route of Highway 413.
Western chorus frogs, though, are particularly sensitive to changes in the quality of their environment, which no doubt Highway 413, no matter how many really, positive mitigation measures you take, it will have an impact on the aquatic environment.
The highway would run for nearly 60 kilometers across the northwestern edges of the GTA. The Ford government has yet to say how much it will cost, but some estimates put it near $10 billion.
We need to build this infrastructure. It's good for the economy, it's good for jobs, and most importantly, it's going to give more people time back in their day.
The Trudeau government has ordered the project to face a federal environmental assessment. The Ford government has launched a court case to try to quash that.
We're going to make sure that we follow environmental protections that we have very vigorously put in place, but it's our priority to build 413.
The battle between Ottawa and the province over who gets final say on the highway is expected to make its way through the courts this year. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. 2023 was a bad year for storms and other severe weather events in Canada. In fact, it was the fourth costliest ever, according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. And as David Thurton shows us, those figures come with a human price as well.
It's been a rough year for many Canadian homeowners.
The level of the water was about 1 meter inside of the home. So my home was destroyed.
The spring flooding in Quebec's Charlevoix region was one weather story among many. You name it, 2023 saw it.
Oh my God!
Tornadoes, pelting hail, and of course, devastating wildfires.
This was a pretty intense year, as Canadians know.
New numbers from the Insurance Bureau of Canada show for the second year in a row, Canada exceeded $3 billion in insured damage from severe weather. The costliest, BC's Okanagan-Shuswap wildfires, coming in at $720 million in insured losses, followed by Ontario's severe summer storms at $340 million. Then the spring ice storm that hit Ontario and Quebec at $330 million. It's becoming an annual trend, earning Canada a reputation for being an expensive place to insure.
What these numbers mean is that when insurers globally take a look at Canada, they view Canada as one of the riskier places in the world to insure and to do business.
This researcher says governments, businesses, and Canadians must make neighborhoods and homes more resistant to floods, wildfires, and storms.
And that's why we keep talking about climate adaptation, for example, so adapting our communities, our homes, so that insurance companies don't have to pull out of insuring our homes.
Pinochet says he couldn't get flood insurance.
I accept what happened, and I'm going to try to do my best to be happy in my new place and continue to make my work.
His house had to be demoed, and he was forced to walk away from the place he called home for 26 years. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Engineers are trying to fix a big issue that's developed with the latest U.S. moon mission just hours after liftoff.
And liftoff of the first United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket, launching a new era in spaceflight to the moon and beyond.
The problem struck about 7 hours after this pre-dawn launch from Florida's Cape Canaveral. The lunar lander failed to orient its solar panel correctly for its long and roundabout trip. If the issue isn't resolved, it threatens the mission for a soft landing of the spacecraft on the moon. Astrobotic Technology is hoping to be the first private company to do just that. If successful, it'll be the first U.S. moon landing mission in more than 50 years. Looking at a live shot of downtown Vancouver, and yes, a wild week of weather ahead with more snow and much colder temperatures on the horizon. Darius will run down all of the watches and warnings coming up next.
The muffins have fiber, a bunch of micronutrients in them, so they're both nutritious and delicious.
I was surprised that we aren't taught more about eating and nutrition, and a lot of the focus is on, what specific medications, what drugs can we give? And so this is really an area that is quite new in Canada, the whole culinary medicine field. But something that we really hope to start expanding on with this elective.
So it'll be great to be able to have this conversation with any future patients I have and sort of be able to have that knowledge to have these conversations about healthy eating.
This concept is so unfamiliar to people, and this elective is quite novel. It's the first of its kind in a Canadian medical school. And so I think that if this elective is successful throughout this year and, it catches the attention of people in our school and also other schools, we hope that they can see, because it's student-led and was still successful, it can be implemented in other areas and hopefully even incorporated into curriculum for all medical students.
It's important to be educated about the food that you eat, and as a future physician, it's especially important to know how to talk about food, diet, and how that plays a major role in your life.
I think the struggle with maybe doctors who are practicing is that we only get so much time to see each patient, and so sometimes those lifestyle modifications can be easy to just list off at the end, and we don't make enough time or are not as comfortable teaching about it. And even learning when is appropriate to refer to a dietitian is something that we're teaching people here, and that's why we do have a dietitian in all of our cooking sessions.
Really excited about this week's topic because it's about brain health. Anytime you can eat fruits and vegetables also helps with memory and cognition.
So they can speak to their role and help us learn how they can help, because collaboration is also such a big part of medicine. So being able to realize when to lean on your teammates as well in a medical team is something that students are learning.
health is a big role, and nutrition plays a big part of that. We can kind of come back to just those basic cooking skills that actually translates into like positive outcomes. Empowering people to be like, okay, like you can do this. It's not as hard as we think it is. Like just little small changes can make big impacts later on. I think we have to shift away from that mindset of like, what shouldn't I eat? It's more like, what should you eat? Like what amazing things are out there that we can add to help they taste good, plus they add nutrition.
We're adding brown sugar, cinnamon, and also some more chocolate chips and almond slivers to decorate.
I'm hoping like the collaboration between the physicians and the dietitians will just be even more of a stronger foundation than it is right now.
You always have to taste what you make.
I'm really impressed that it's being offered to physicians. I think that's just the first step that's been fantastic, and just having the opportunity to be a part of it has just been.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Hey, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is proud to launch Vibin, hosted by award-winning journalist Rohith Joseph. Discover fresh sounds from BC and beyond with this province-wide music program. Vibin airs every Saturday at 4 p.m. starting January 13th. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Let's bring in our Darius Madavi to time out the forecast. And Darius, I think we've lost track of how many watches, weather statements, warnings we've had in place in BC.
Yes, snowfall, we have wind, we have those winter storm warnings, we have that special weather statement about the high tides and the high winds we're going to have tomorrow morning, so a little bit of worry about what the waves and water levels are going to do there. It's going to be a busy one. Now, we still had all this activity earlier today, lots of snow, lots of rain coming. As we saw as the day progressed, we saw some of that, more of that snow turn into rain because those temperatures are coming up, but it's going to be short-lived. Now, if we take a look here, the reason why it's going to be short-lived is this polar vortex. It is our best friend because usually this this fast jet stream keeps all that really cold Arctic air locked in place, preventing it from making its way down here to us. So we actually love this low pressure system because it keeps us warm. But every once in a while, it starts to weaken, and when that jet stream weakens, this can wobble, and then that Arctic air can make its way down. We call this a lobe of that polar vortex, and right now it is currently sitting right over BC. And if we take a look at our temperature map, you can see that big mass of purple Arctic air make its way down. This is one of the more dramatic models. It does have Vancouver making its way down to -15, -20 degrees. Not sure that's going to happen by the end of this week, but it will be definitely a cool one. And so really what matters here, we know we're going to have the temperatures for snow and for ice, but are we going to get the precipitation? And that's the big question. We have this current system that's sitting over the province. We have lots of snow coming to the interior right now, still some rain happening all along the coast. And if we watch this progress forward, we can see still lots of snow coming by tomorrow. We're going to watch this continue by Wednesday, clearing up a little bit at times, except for the southeast, but it does return. And then by Thursday, we are going to see the potential for some of that snow to hit us here in Vancouver once again. But the big thing we're going to watch for the end of the week into the weekend to see whether we're actually going to get more of these flurries, more of this heavier snow, is what happens with this next system that's set to roll in. This is very far out. This is very much up in the air. But one of the models, this one is saying it's not going to crash into the coast like we see it seems. It's instead going to divert its way down into here. So again, this is Friday morning, very much far away up in the air. But the models are in a little bit of disagreement, both in terms of the temperature and in terms of what's happening with the precipitation. So we've got a wild one. We're going to see what happens. Now, if we take a look at our conditions, still very active tomorrow, but starting to taper off into the evening and lighten up. We should see a lot of those weather warnings come down by the late morning. If we look at our mountains, you can see still more snow potentially coming here overnight tonight. Maybe even some at sea level, but I wouldn't count on it. If anything, just a trace amount should be gone by the time it even touches the ground. And lastly, here's our forecast. We do have thunderstorms possible tomorrow, but more than likely just going to be rain, fortunately, because I do like a thunderstorm. Showers still possible on Wednesday, and then potential for that to turn to flurries into the end of the week. And we see temperatures really start to drop. So we'll see what happens with all that Arctic air.
You have a busy week in front of you. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Tanya.
And that is your late news for this Monday, January 8th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.